I was hospitalized for 21 days and my son gave my house to his in-laws. When I returned, he said, "It's not yours anymore, don't come back." I simply replied, "Enjoy it." 1 week later, the surprise I had prepared left them all in panic. The hospital discharge papers crinkled in my pocket as the taxi pulled up to my Victorian home. 21 days felt like an eternity. Complications from my hip replacement had kept me fighting infection and fever while the world continued spinning without me. I was exhausted, but relieved to finally be home. Home, the 2-story house William and I had lovingly restored over our 30 years of marriage, stood before me bathed in late afternoon light. Roses I'd planted decades ago still bloomed along the walkway, though they needed tending after my absence. "Need help with your bags?" "Ma'am," the driver asked, eyeing my walking cane, "just to the door, please." I replied, my voice still raspy from the hospital's dry air, "My son should be waiting." The front door opened before we reached it. Stephen, my only child, stood in the doorway, not with a welcoming smile I expected, but with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, resolute mom. His voice matched his face, detached, formal behind him. I glimpsed movement in my living room. His wife, Jessica, and were those her parents? "Stephen, what's going on?" I asked, stepping forward. He blocked the entrance, not moving aside. "You shouldn't have come here. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." The taxi driver set my small suitcase beside me. Sensing the tension, I paid him quickly, suddenly wishing he wouldn't leave. "There's no easy way to say this," Stephen continued as the taxi pulled away. "Things have changed while you were hospitalized. The house isn't yours anymore." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with my recovering body. "What are you talking about?" "We've made arrangements. Jessica's parents needed to relocate from Seattle, and this house has way more space than you need. The paperwork's been signed. You'll need to find another living situation." My mind struggled to process his words. Paperwork. What paperwork I'd signed? Nothing. "Stephen, this is ridiculous. Let me inside my home right now." I stepped forward again, leaning heavily on my cane. This time, Jessica appeared beside him, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing what I recognized as my own emerald earrings. "William's gift for our 25th anniversary, Martha," she said, with that false sweetness I'd grown to recognize over the years. "We've packed your personal items. They're in boxes in the garage. We can have them delivered wherever you're staying." From behind them emerged Jessica's parents, Howard and Patricia Thompson. I'd met them only a handful of times over the years. Howard, tall and distinguished with silver hair, had always struck me as arrogant. Patricia, with her perpetual judgmental expression, had never bothered to hide her disdain for my quaint home, the same home she now stood in as if she owned it. "I'm sorry it came to this," Howard offered without sounding sorry at all. "But Stephen made the arrangements quite clear. The house has been transferred legally." "Legally?" I sputtered, "That's impossible. I never signed anything." Stephen's face, hardened. "Power of attorney. Remember that paperwork you signed before your surgery for medical decisions? It covered financial matters too." The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had signed paperwork, a stack of documents my own son had presented while I was anxious about my upcoming surgery. I trusted him completely. Hadn't even read beyond the first page. "You tricked me." The words felt hollow, inadequate for the magnitude of this betrayal. "We're doing what's best for everyone." Jessica interjected, "This house is too much for you to maintain alone. Stephen's been managing it for years anyway. Don't appear here again." Stephen said firmly, "We'll have your things delivered. The decision is final." I stood there leaning on my cane, staring at the son I'd raised, the little boy I'd read bedtime stories to, the teenager I'd taught to drive, the man whose college education I'd paid for by working overtime. Now a stranger wearing my son's face. "This is illegal," I said quietly, "and you know it. It's done." He replied, coldly, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Something broke inside me then, but not in the way they expected, not into tears or pleading. Instead, a cold clarity washed over me, a crystallizing of purpose I hadn't felt since my days overseeing banking compliance. "Enjoy it." Then I said, simply turning away, "Enjoy it." All the confusion on their faces at my calm departure was almost worth the devastation. Almost as I limped back to the waiting taxi I'd wisely asked to wait, I pulled out my phone not to call the police, not yet, that would come later in my own time, on my own terms. Instead, I texted a single message to Diane Anderson, Plan B. Now, after 21 days fighting for my life in the hospital, I returned home to find my own son had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way, with my walking cane still supporting my weakened body. I faced the cruel reality that he and his wife had given my beloved home to her parents. What they don't realize is that my common joy, it wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of my counterattack. The downtown Portland hotel room was impersonal but clean, a temporary refuge while I gathered my strength and my wits. My hands still trembled as I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. Diane had responded immediately on it. "Stay safe. Coming to you." Diane Anderson and I had been friends for 40 years since our college days. She'd become a formidable attorney, while I'd built my career in banking compliance. After William died, she'd helped me organize my affairs with a thoroughness born of our shared professional paranoia. Always have a backup plan. She'd advised, especially with family money. At the time, I thought she was being overly cautious. Now, her foresight seemed almost prophetic. A soft knock at the door announced her arrival despite the late hour. Diane looked perfectly put together in her tailored suit, silver-streaked hair pulled back in her trademark bun. Her expression, however, was pure fury. "Those absolute vultures," she hissed, pulling me into a careful hug, mindful of my still-healing body. "Are you all right, physically or emotionally?" I attempted a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes both. She set her briefcase on the desk and began unpacking files with practiced efficiency. I'm standing, which is something the rest. I sank back onto the bed. I keep thinking, I'll wake up and this will be some infection-induced nightmare. Diane's expression softened momentarily before her professional mask returned. I've already started the process. The trust documentation is ironclad. William was nothing if not meticulous. The house transfer won't stand up to legal scrutiny. How long? I asked to invalidate their fraudulent transfer. A few weeks, maybe months, if they fight dirty. She paused, but Martha, there's something else, something.